following the allocation of over 9.5 million to 153 Quebec community media outlets. In the last fiscal year, 21-22, the Quebec government has recently announced an additional funding injection of nearly 6 million for 155 media outlets. Initially aimed at assisting media affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, the current situation reflects a shift as legacy media encounters challenges stemming from changing audience preferences, favoring online sources, and losing support due to biased coverage. Pierre-Carl Pelado recent announcement of 547 job cuts at Québécois, including 300 at TVA Group, underscores the struggles faced by traditional media. Other major outlets, such as Bell, have also implemented significant downsizing efforts. Should the future of legacy media remain untouched by subsidies, allowing them to reassess strategies that are not resonating with the audience? Independent media outlets like Ribbon News, which don't receive government funding, provide information that others might shy away from covering. A crucial question arises. What is the limit of subsidized Canadians are willing to provide to support struggling media? To delve into this, we are in discussion with Éric Duan, leader of the Quebec Conservative Party, regarding media bailout from the Quebec and federal government. Mr. Legault, in 2021-2022, it did gave in subsidized 9.5 million to the legacy media. If we follow the tendency, we will think that the number this year will be lower, but no, this year he added $6 million to the legacy media. I want to have your thought about this.
Well, first off, it's very difficult to understand why Mr. Legault wants to subsidize so badly the media. It is important to understand that there is a huge risk by doing it. We saw what happened during the crisis a few years ago, 2-3 years ago. There was a radio station in Quebec City called Radio X, who was very, very critical of the role on the management of the crisis by the government. During that time, as you know, there was almost nobody advertising because everything was shut down. So there was no cars being sold, no restaurants open. So nobody was advertising except the government with its promotion of public health. And what the government did at that time was to attack that radio station and withdraw its publicity, which was the only revenue the radio station had. It almost killed the most popular radio station in Quebec City because they disagreed with the government. And that's where we see the risk of having a government that subsidizes some media. It's not the role of the government to subsidize the media. If those media, the revenues are going down, it's because their audience is going down. If they want to have more money, well, they should focus on the people who are listening to their radio station instead of the subsidies of the government. Because now what we see in Quebec is that some of those media, some of those bosses are looking now more and more at the government for more subsidies and less at their audience. And that's the huge problem in the market right now. And that's one part of the answer. The other problem is generational, because as you know, the youth does not watch the same kind of media anymore. They're not stuck in front of their TV. They don't subscribe to the cable. They don't watch LCN, which is our main news online in the traditional media. And they don't watch those networks. They're getting informed on their cell phone with clips here and there, with 15 seconds on social medias here and there. They're not less or more informed. They're differently informed. And by subsidizing the traditional media, we're subsidizing the media of one generation against the media of the next generation. And I don't think that's good for the future neither.
Mm-hmm. And what is the risk of the neutrality of the media when we see that about $15 million will be given in the province of Quebec to the media. And now we see $600 million by the federal to go to media.
Well, it's a huge problem because there's a huge risk of who is going to get the money and how. In Quebec, it's the traditional media that is getting in, the new media, the alternative media is getting nothing. So the youth is getting nothing. We're subsidizing the medias that are already on a decline. And in Ottawa, it's even more scary because the $600 million right now, we don't even know if, for example, CBC will get a chunk of it. They already get $1 billion from the federal government. Are they going to get the biggest chunk of the $600 million as well? And what's going to be the place of the other media? Are the people on social media going to get a chunk of it, or is it only the traditional declining media that is going to get all the money? It's all sorts of questions that are going to be raised. Who's going to decide? Is it going to be political all over again? And then is there a risk that it's going to be ideologically oriented? You know, if we want to have true independent media, they need first and foremost to be financially independent. It's that simple, that easy. And you're not financially independent when you have a government board that is telling you which percentage of an amount, a chunk of money you will receive. That's not the way an independent media should work.
You and probably Mr. Poilievre, you are two examples of the obvious neutrality of our media.
How many shows are conservative on CBC Radio-Canada? Zero. You're never going to find that. Here, we even had a radio host, Penelope McWade, who admitted publicly that the mandate of her show is to be progressive, meaning socialist, to be politically biased. How many shows are subsidized by the state to be biased in favor of conservatives or libertarians or free market oriented Canadians? Zero. Like, what's that? Is it the mandate of CBC to subsidize a political ideology? Because that's what it looks like right now. And hopefully it's going to change. I hope that Pierre Poilievre becomes the next Prime Minister of Canada, because there's a huge cleanup to be done at CBC. And it's just unacceptable what's going on. And I know federal conservatives are talking only about CBC in English, but at Radio-Canada in French, there's a lot of cleaning to be done. I understand that their mandate is different and they need to make sure they inform French Canadians outside of Quebec. But at the same time, here in Quebec, their treatment is completely unfair, and they need to be called for what they are, and they need to make sure that this stops right after the next federal election.
Recently, at one of the CRTC hearing, Gigi McCullough, who is a YouTuber but also a columnist for National Post sometime, was explaining that the normal circle for businesses or enterprise is if they are going not well, they're gonna die eventually. But with the interference of the government subsidies, they are stopping that normal circle. And so do you think that it's something true that we should probably let the media dying if it's the normal circle?
Look, I don't wish for any business to die. I mean, we all hope that the media and all sorts of businesses survive and grow in Canada. It's good for our economy, it's good for our jobs, it's good for our people. That being said, it's a normal cycle. I mean, every single year in Canada, there's thousands and thousands of new businesses that are growing and are taking expansion and having new clients. And on the other side, there's businesses who are downsizing, and some of them are even going bankrupt. That's the reality of capitalism, of free market. And I think that we still live in a free market society, and we need to accept that, because that's the way we're reaching a greater future, because that's the way that everybody gets better, because they're competing against each other and they want to win instead of losing. And that's very, very good. If we do the opposite, then it's the opposite that's going to happen too, which means, we're going to subsidize businesses that are not worth it, and we're going to penalize those who have growth potential big time. So we need to accept that fact. And unfortunately, right now, in terms of media, it seems that we're not able to say, some of them we need to let them go. And it's going to have to happen. Just look at the statistics. I mean, the new generation is not within the traditional media. And it's not even a matter of just treatment or what's going on. It's just the fact that they don't consume information or culture the same way that their parents or grandparents did. And we need to take that as a fact. We're not going to change the trend. We're not going to put them back with a black and white television, you know? So if you're fighting against technology, if you're fighting against the future, you have no future. And so we have to take that as granted and move on from there. Unfortunately, our politicians right now in Canada and in Quebec are doing the exact opposite.
Do you believe that the subsidies from the government are stopping the pressure on the company to reformate the way they are providing their information?
Obviously, when you're subsidizing something that doesn't work, it gives no incentives to the entrepreneurs to do better. The only thing they're going to do is invest more to get more subsidies. And that's exactly what's happening right now with the Quebec media. Instead of transforming themselves and making sure that they reach a new generation, they're looking at government and they're begging more and more money. It's an endless circle and it leads nowhere. So we need to find a new way of thinking about it. And I understand that some of those media are very useful for some politicians and political parties, and they want to make sure they survive because it's very good for their political base. But economically and for the future of Quebec, it makes absolutely no sense.
So independent media outlet as Ribbon News, who dare to show you the other side of the story, who dare to cover some of the story that mainstream media will not cover. If you want to support our journalism, you can do so at ribbonnews.com/donate. You can donate what you can for encouraging our journalism and make sure we still have a second power in the media.